The metaverse is the latest buzzword that every tech company under the sun is using right now. In short, it basically is the next generation of communication technologies, focusing on three main pillars: the blockchain, augmented reality, and virtual reality. Now, of course, each company has a slightly different vision of how the metaverse is going to look and work. Well, today I'm going to be taking my own approach and building my own style of metaverse through something called photogrammetry. Okay, so let's start out with what is photogrammetry. Basically, it is the process of reconstructing a 3D object through taking hundreds and hundreds of photos of it from basically every angle. We're going to feed this into a computer algorithm and it's going to work out depth from those images and spit us out a lovely 3D model. Now, I wish it would be easy as scanning this thing in, placing it into Unity and starting to use it in the metaverse, but it really isn't that simple. There's quite a lot more to it than that, and I'm going to be going through the whole process with you today, so maybe you can go away and start to create your own virtual assets. Be that a phone or a consumer end drone. We'll take a look at both of the options. Let's start off with capturing something a little small. Let's start off with this hat. Let's go. Let's say we want this hat to be a part of our metaverse. We want all of the avatars to be able to buy and wear this hat while they talk to their friends and play games and do whatever it is you do in the metaverse. The first step is really to prepare the space. We've got to make sure that we've got nice, even lighting wherever we are, and it needs to be a well-lit environment. The better the lighting is, the better our results are going to be overall. Right now, I'm using two of these LED studio lights from Newer, and they're pretty good. I'm not having them at 100% brightness, I'm bringing them down to about 30% and ensuring that I'm not getting any real harsh shadows over my subject, in this case the hat. Of course though, the hat can't just be on the table, because we need to be able to grab some of the underside detail as well. So you could be propping this up with some fish wire and hanging it from the ceiling. That would be a really nice way to do it, and because it's fish line wire, it's actually very, very thin, so it's not going to show up in the actual render. But I don't have that option, so I'm just using a wooden stand here. It's just a wooden bowl. It is just a wooden pipe that I'm sitting down and putting this hat on top of. It does mean that I'm going to have to cut this out in an edit with 3D modelling software such as Blender, but that's not such a big deal, and for what we're doing right here, it really doesn't matter too much. Okay, so our setup is complete and the subject is ready. Now it's time to actually start scanning. There are a few ways we can do this. We could do this with a DSLR camera or even with the phone in our pocket, and I'm going to be using the phone today because it's the simplest and easiest method to get started. I'm going to be using an app called Metascan. There are tons of different apps for both Android and iOS devices, but in my case I'm going to be using Metascan because I found that it gave the best results and was actually fairly cheap in terms of their pro plans as well. So loading up the app, we can see I just tap that plus button and we just start taking photos. We want to be taking as many photos as we can. The more photos we get, the more detail we'll get in our models. I want to be looking at around 50 to 100 photos for something of this size. Closer to that 100 mark would be better though. Now, we want to make sure that we are capturing as much detail as possible. In order to do this, we're going to be taking photos in a dome shape around our object, ensuring that the last image that we took, the next one is going to be overlapping 70% or more. This just helps that algorithm to really understand the depth and exactly what's there. This process can take a little while. Of course, if you're taking loads of photos, it's going to take longer. So let's do this quick time lapse of me taking all of these photos, and then when it's ready, we just hit the done button. It is worth noting, if you do have a device that supports LiDAR, for example the newer iPhones or the iPad Pro, I would highly recommend using it. It does help to just understand that depth a little bit better, and it will give you a much cleaner result at the end of it. Once you're all done, you're just going to hit process and allow the cloud to do its magic, taking all of those photos and producing us a 3D model. This is going to take a little while, so feel free to go grab a coffee and do whatever you need to while you wait for this to process. You'll get a notification when it's done. And when it's done, you can marvel at the sheer detail that you actually get from one of these models. You can pan around it, you can zoom in, and we can see that actually the detail is pretty impressive. Particularly, you can see each stitch and line in this hat, which I think is just incredible. It is now ready for export for us to put into our 3D software. So in order to do that, we're just going to share and go for an OBJ. OBJs are the best model type to use, particularly when we are optimizing it a little bit later on. This feature is a paid feature or a pro feature for Metascan. Now, this doesn't matter too much. It is very, very affordable, and they also offer a 7-day free trial, so you may as well take out that free trial and have a play. You never know, you might fall in love with the technology like I did. So just get that OBJ, save it somewhere on your phone, and make sure that you can easily get it to your desktop, be that through iCloud or any other way. So we know we can do it with something a little smaller like a hat, but what if our subject is a little, well, bigger? Well, actually the process is pretty similar to what we've been doing thus far, but of course I can't go up there and take the pictures myself. I'm simply not that tall. And that's where this little guy comes in. This is the DJI Mini 2. It is one of the most affordable camera drones on the market right now and is perfectly suited for photogrammetry. Basically, we're going to take this thing up in the air and do the same dome that we did before, this time just flying with this guy. Of course, we can get a slightly more expensive drone, think the Air 2S or the Mavic 3 if we desired. They will give us better results overall, but this is a great starting point. Okay, so I've captured my images. I captured around 95, but with a subject of this size, it is worth getting as many as you can. The more pictures you get, the better the outcome will be. Now we've got these loaded, let's head back to the office and get them loaded up and try out this model. Okay, cool, right? We have our 100 images now of the castle. So how are we actually going to produce all of these? Because before, we just pressed a button and it did it all for us. Well, we're going to need to take all of these images and put them onto our computer and use a different software to actually produce them. In my case, I am using Metashape. It is a really, really simple and very, very powerful software. Again, it is normally a paid software, but they do offer a free trial, which is perfect for our scenario here, where we're just testing the waters to see just what photogrammetry can do. Once we've downloaded that, we're ready to basically just import all of our images. We can right-click on the side here, add the folder, and add the folder with all of those images in. This is going to take a little bit of time to get ready, but once it's ready, you will see every image in this 3D space, and they're represented by the cameras. Now that's done, we actually need to right-click and start the processing. We actually want to start with creating a point cloud. This is basically the very first idea of how we understand depth, or how the computer understands depth. It's going to give us a pretty good idea of just what the outcome is going to be for this model. So we're just going to right click and create that point cloud. This is going to take a significant amount of time, and each one of these steps is going to take longer and longer. If you do have a dedicated GPU, it is well worth using that over something like a laptop that I've got here. Unfortunately, I've only got the laptop, I don't have dedicated graphics, so it does take me a little while longer than most to produce some of these photogrammetry outcomes. Now that point cloud is created, we can get a general idea of what the model's going to look like, and it already looks pretty good from a distance, right? But as soon as we start to zoom in, we notice that there's just nothing there. It's missing a ton of detail, and that's where the dense point cloud's going to come in. This basically does the same, but fills in a few of those gaps in between. We can right click and then generate that new dense cloud. Again, this takes a while, but when we come back, we can see that that model now looks a lot better than it did, but there are still a lot of holes. So we need to patch up those holes by actually generating the mesh. Again, we're going to right click, generate mesh. This process is going to take the longest. I highly recommend doing it at a medium level. You can do it at its highest level, but obviously the higher the detail, the longer this process is going to take. Once that's done, we can see this 3D model, which looks pretty incredible, but seems to be lacking any kind of textural detail. It doesn't look very great right now. So, once again, we need to right-click and generate those textures. I highly recommend using the occlusion ones, and also just doing it from the 3D model rather than those photos. Once we've done that, it's going to take a little while again, but we will finally be produced this 3D model, which looks absolutely incredible. We can't really pull this straight into Unity right now for a number of reasons. The poly count is far too high, the triangular mesh just will not play nicely inside of Unity. So what we're going to have to do is file, export this as an OBJ, and get ready to edit it, as well as reform that mesh and get it into Unity. So let's head over and do that now. Okay, so we've opened up Blender here. Blender is a 3D software that's free to use and is really, really powerful. We're going to be pulling both of our models into here and just removing some of that excess mesh. There's a lot here of detail that we don't need, particularly with this hat. We don't need this space right now, so we can just highlight it all, remove those faces and just do a little bit of cleanup to get it looking its best. Obviously, this was a really quick process for me. I'm not a 3D artist, I haven't spent a ton of time in these softwares, so I did a really quick pass just to make it look a little bit better than it did. I'm not too worried about it. If you are, then you can spend your time working through all of this detail. Once that's done though, we can just export it as an OBJ and get it ready to process inside of MeshLab. I'm doing the same for the castle here, just removing a lot of that detail. What I'm going to do at the end is show you two models. The first castle is going to be the one that I've edited here without any of the grounds at a lower detail, as well as the one with the grounds at a much higher detail, and you can see what the difference is that it actually makes. Now those are both exported, we need to regenerate these meshes in order to actually be able to use them inside of Unity. So the best way to do this is through a software called MeshLab. We can download it for free, it's open source, I'll leave all the links for all of the software that I'm using in the description down below. Opening up MeshLab, we can then just import our mesh and we can see the hat or the castle depending on which one I'm working on. In this case, it's the hat. Now it's in here, we actually need to apply a filter to it. So we're going to go in and apply one of the regeneration filters. We can see exactly which one I'm applying here. But basically what it's going to do is going to remesh this model, bringing down that poly count to a more acceptable level. Normally it's by half by default, but we can adjust all of these values if we need to. I highly recommend just fixing the normals and ticking the 3 boxes that I am. This gave me the best results, but of course your results will vary. Spend a little bit of time playing and seeing what you can produce. Once that's done, it's all ready again for an export. So just file, export as an OBJ, and this is now a model that is ready for Unity. Okay, so now we're inside of Unity, we can just pull in these models, drag them in, and we can take a look at them flying around in our editor. These look really, really good. I am actually really impressed by the amount of detail we've managed to produce through a relatively low amount of images. Particularly for that castle, this was just 95 images. I would highly recommend getting many, many more images if you can, closer to the 200 or 300 range if you want the greatest of detail. The hat is produced very, very well. There's a couple of little sections that I would have liked to have tidied up a little bit more, but I simply didn't have the time or the skills to do so.
So here we are in virtual reality. Let's take a quick look at this hat down here. It's a little bit lower than I was expecting, but as we get down towards it, we can actually see some of that detail. Of course, there are a few little bits where we've got some missing detail, but overall, I am very impressed by just how good this hat actually looks. Now, of course, if I stand up and take a look behind me here, we can see the castle itself. This is at its lowest resolution, mainly because I was just demoing what we could produce here. So, it definitely doesn't look the best that it could. It could certainly look a lot better. But it does give you a general idea of just how easy it was for us to go and take a drone up and produce something that potentially could be usable with a little bit of cleanup. Of course, we could have done it at a medium resolution, and that medium resolution would have done a much better job of producing some of these textures. But overall, I am very, very impressed by just how good this thing actually looks.
I genuinely do believe that this is going to be one of the ways in the future we're going to be shopping for both our physical and virtual items inside the metaverse, as well as being able to just reconstruct and remember many of these architectural buildings that may not be here in hundreds or thousands of years' time. we've got these 3D models that are beautiful reconstructions of exactly how they did look, and it's an incredible feat. Anyway guys, what did you think of this? Did you enjoy this little tutorial? Did you enjoy my glimpse into the metaverse? If you did, let me know with a like and a comment down below, and of course get subscribed as well if you're new. We are so close to our goal of 2,000 subscribers. My name has been Robert, this has been Review Clue, and I will catch you in the next one. Adios.